Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Sheedy. I'm here to share with you what I've learned over the years about tools, techniques, and tips for virtual Zoom meetings, specifically with remote participants, although many of the things that I'm going to be speaking about can apply much more broadly. This workshop was originally prepared for the Resilient Indigenous Leaders Network, which I presented on November 30th and mistakenly did not record. So I'm now recording it on today on December 30th, and hope that you enjoy and learn something from what I have to offer here today. Just a little bit about myself before I get going. I've been working in community development for most of my adult career, so 20 to going on 25 years now. And I started doing that community development at a national level about 10 or 12 years ago. And of course, when you organize nationally, you have no choice but to take advantage of online platforms and ways of communicating that are not in person. So that's really where I started to learn about all of these amazing tools that have evolved over the last 10 or 15 years. And of course, now with COVID, all of a sudden there's a big rush for people to learn these techniques. So I've learned a lot myself in the past year, and I'm here to share some of those things with you today. This is the first part in a 3-part workshop that RILN is offering to its members. So this workshop was part 1, really focusing in on the technology and some of the tools, the platforms that are available to support virtual online meetings. Part 2 will be taking place on January 11th, 2021, for RILN members only. This will be more around looking at framing, planning online engagement. So for bigger audiences with people that you may not know as well. And then part 3 on January 18th, we'll be looking at good online practices specific to Indigenous contexts. So this will really be drawing on the participants' experience, and all of these workshops were meant to be participatory, although this one today, obviously with just me online, is far from it. So I'm just going to walk you through, as if we were in a meeting together, kind of how I orient participants in general to meetings. I do this series of slides almost every time I do a meeting, unless it's a group of people who are meeting for a series of days, one after the other. It just helps people feel familiar with Zoom and puts them at ease. So in general, I run through these slides. So here we go. There's some etiquette to using Zoom and to being in online meetings. The first is to keep your line muted when you're not speaking. A lot of us are working at home and have kids in the background. People are coming and going. So this just keeps our audio space nice and clean. If you're on the phone, then you can use *6 to mute and unmute yourself. It's great to be able to see each other. This is what distinguishes Zoom or online platforms from a teleconference line. So if you can, and this isn't always possible for remote participants, but if you can, please keep your video on. It's just lovely to see each other and helps us to feel a little bit more like we're in relationship with each other. If you're having trouble hearing, this happens a lot for rural and remote participants because their bandwidth isn't sufficient to support Zoom. So if you're starting to hear a crinkling in the line or your videos are freezing, then the first thing you can do is close all the other programs on your phone or computer, whatever you're meeting on. This includes web browsers, email programs, anything that does any streaming in particular, anything that uses the internet in particular should be closed off, but you can even close the other programs just to give your computer the best chance. You should turn off, if that doesn't work, then turn off your video. We sacrifice seeing each other so that we can hear each other, of course. You use the little video icon in the bottom left-hand side of your screen, And if this doesn't work, the last resort is to call in using the phone numbers. So you can use those phone numbers much like a teleconference call, and we'll all be connected here on Zoom, whether you're on your computer or on your phone. If you're having tech problems at all, please use the chat function. So you just click on the little chat icon down at the bottom of your screen. And of course, you can call a tech person. So if this was a real meeting, I would have somebody's phone number there, and it would have been shared ahead of the meeting. I'll get into some of the background to setting all of this up in a moment. And of course, you are all watching this on YouTube, but I'm speaking as if you are in a meeting on Zoom. So it's important to let people know to rename themselves. Many of us have children who are doing online learning right now, and you know, your name may show up as your child's name, but we want to know what your real name is. So if you to do that, please, you can hover over your image in the Zoom screen and go to the three little dots that can pop up in a little blue square at the top right-hand corner of your image. You click rename, and then a little box will pop up, and you can put in your name and even your organization. How to jump into the conversation. This is, you know, a really important part of Zoom and doing your meetings on Zoom. You don't want people to just show up. You want them to actually contribute to the conversation. So there's three ways that you can participate. So if you want to speak up, one way you can have participants do that is by clicking on the participant icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then clicking on raise hand. So this shows the facilitator literally a little raised hand, and that way you know that that person would like to speak, and you can put them in your speaking order. Chat away anytime. So this is one of the fun additions to, I would say, online meetings, is that sort of side chat is welcome, right? And when you're in an in-person meeting, it's a bit annoying when people are chatting to each other at the table. But in an online setting, this is more than welcome. So you just click on the chat icon. I recommend you keep that box open during the meeting. And anytime you have a question or a comment, or you have a resource or something you want to share, please go ahead and just pop it in there. You don't have to wait for question period to do that. And of course, you can use reactions. So again, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see this little reactions icon, and you have a number of fun ones in there that you're welcome to try. So other little tips and tricks I like to share with people at the beginning of Zoom meetings is that you can change the view. So I think Zoom automatically puts you into just seeing the speaker's big face. Personally, my preference is to see everyone's face. So I feel like we're all in the room together. So you do that by clicking on View at the top right-hand side of your screen, and then clicking on Gallery View. During presentations, you can also fiddle around with the view to get it just right for you. If you hate seeing yourself on video, as I do, then you just need to click on your image on those three little dots on the blue square and click on Hide Self View, and you will disappear from sight, except for the rest of us, of course. And if at any point you want to see the list of participants, you can click on the participant icon, which is also at the bottom of your screen if you're on Zoom. So I will be showing you all of these features, but I encourage people when they're on a Zoom meeting to just play with it, right? There's lots of buttons, you can't break it. If you make a mistake and knock yourself off the meeting, then you can just rejoin. But this is really a very user-friendly tool, and is why I recommend it to anybody wanting to do virtual meetings. As part of the workshop with Resilient participants, we had a look at what makes a good meeting. Not just a virtual meeting, but in-person meetings, because as you'll see, there's a lot of overlap in what makes a good in-person meeting and what makes a good virtual meeting. So we used a tool called Jamboard to think about this together. Just a quick introduction to Jamboard. This is yet another addition to the Google Suite for those of you who are already familiar with Google Drive or Google Docs. Then this is a great addition to your online Google life. If you've never used Google Suite, I'm going to be introducing that a little bit later. But for now, I'm going to introduce you to Jamboard, which is basically an alternative to flip charts, using flip charts and post-it notes, or getting people to write their own thoughts up on a wall using post-its during a meeting. So it's great for group brainstorming. You'll see it's super fun. You ask people to put their ideas up, everybody can do it at the same time, and you just get lots of ideas being generated quite quickly. You can move through a conversation and generate ideas in a very participatory, fun way. It's also very easy to use. As you'll see, participants pick it up within a minute or two. There's not a huge learning curve. And there's an option too, if you find that you have participants who either are on the phone and don't have internet connection, well then you can just capture what they're saying yourself as a facilitator into the sticky notes, or you can have participants fill in their own, or have some combination of the two going on. So it's a nice versatile technique that allows you to visualize what's going on. So I'm just going to share. Welcome to Jamboard. So this is how you get to, one of the ways to create a Jamboard is by going to jamboard.google.com on your web browser. And you'll arrive at this place. It'll probably be blank for you if you've never used it before. As you can see, I use this quite a bit. You create a new Jamboard by clicking on this orange icon at the bottom. I'm just going to take you to one that I've set up for this meeting here. So this is what you get when you start a new Jamboard. As you can see, it's very similar to Google Documents in that you can share it with anyone. So the way you would do that is, let's say you wanted to have everyone in your meeting join you in the Jamboard to put up their own stickies. Then you would go over here to Get Link and make sure that it says anyone on the internet with this link can edit. So you can change that if you need to. If you just want people to view it, you can go here, but it's very important to check that, otherwise you'll end up with some frustration. So you want to copy the link, click Done, and then what I usually do is I then paste that link into the chat box for meeting participants to access. Give them a couple minutes, and next thing you know, you'll be seeing a bunch of little animal icons pop up here, and then you can invite people to start working with you in the space. So this is a really fun and easy space. I'm just going to click forward. I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but this is kind of what you can do to set up a space, right? So you've got all these options over here. The ones that I use the most are putting up a shape. So you can see I've done that already up here. I'm just going to show you how I did it quickly. You can change the color of it. Let's make this one pink. You can even change the outline color of it. And then you can add text on top of it. So this is a test text, okay? As you can see, very user-friendly. You can make it bigger, smaller, you can even rotate the text if you want, okay? So that's stuff that you'll use to set up a space, much like I've done here, right? So I've put a question at the top that we're going to be addressing together as a group, and then you invite people in to that space, and they're not actually playing with that. What they're going to do is add stickies. So the main thing that I ask participants to do when they come into this space is add a sticky note. You do that just by clicking on that little icon on the left you saw, and then this little box pops up, and you can put in here, testing the sticky. Here we go. As you can see, you have 5 options for colors here. If that's too confusing for your participants, you don't even need to tell them about that. Some of them will figure it out on their own. Let's change this one to green just for fun, and then you click Save. As you can see, it just pops right up there. You can add another one right away if you like. If you're brainstorming, it's fun to just be able to go. But otherwise, you press Cancel, and then you click on the sticky, and you move it wherever you'd like on the page. And again, you can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, you can rotate it. And if you're like, oh, wait a minute, I meant to make that pink, then you can edit it and change it or change the wording or whatever. It's very Very straightforward. You'll see, you'll get the hang of it in no time. So I just wanted to take you over to this great brainstorm that we had with the RILN members who attended this workshop the first time. So I asked them to answer the question, what makes a good meeting? So we've all been in many, many meetings. We all know how frustrating it can be to be in a bad meeting. I'm going to take you over to the sticky that I completed with the RILN members when we did this workshop. I asked them to tell me what makes a good meeting. Because we've all been in many, many meetings. We know exactly what makes a good meeting or a not so good meeting. As you can see here, I've color themed these so that you can see the yellow and the green are part of the brainstorm. I've identified themes for these groupings in blue. And then I tried to highlight in pink what is unique to virtual meetings. And in orange, I've put things that are harder to do in virtual meetings that may just be reserved to in-person meetings. So let's have a quick look at this. I split up the preparation and doing of good meetings to before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. And obviously, these are not exclusive categories. There's a lot of overlap. For example, the timing section is very much a before and during item. So let's just do a quick review of this then. So before the meeting, you want to prepare the agenda. Obviously, that's key. This will help you to set a good pace for the meeting, to think through how long things will take, give you a clear structure and plan. You'll make sure that you don't have too many items in one session because that can mess up your timing. It helps to articulate why you're inviting people to the meeting. It's always good to have good, clear goals or objectives for your meeting. So that's an important thing to prepare before. You also need good communication. So bottom left-hand corner, this includes clear, direct information provided to people you're inviting to the meeting, and any information they need ahead of time, such as the agenda, any minutes from the last meeting, or any readings you want them to do. As well, we have this question of timing. This obviously is a big concern. So setting up the timing, which is a part of setting the agenda, right? So you need to ensure that you've scheduled breaks. This is very, very, very important and something that people often skip in the interest of time. You cannot skip breaks. We'll get into that a little bit later, but 5 to 10 minute breaks are plenty. I would say every hour to an hour and a half during a virtual meeting. You want to leave time for questions and feedback, or schedule another follow-up session if things go longer than you expected. As we said here, you don't want the meeting to be too long, especially in a virtual setting. Our attention span is just not made to be in a screen environment. So doing day-long meetings is not possible in a virtual meeting. I recommend no more than 3-hour meetings. Some people stretch it up to 4, but I think that's a lot. So rather than doing full-day meetings, you might think about doing a number of 3-hour meetings, maybe in consecutive days or consecutive weeks. Another part of timing is that you want breakout sessions that are well structured and that are long enough to do the task at hand. So I think that that's a really important point, and not something we'll get into too much in this workshop, but in the next workshop we'll touch on that. And of course you want the process to flow, so things are more tangible and real. So one of the unique things about virtual online meetings is that you need to allow time for troubleshooting, right? You have to expect, especially if it's a new group of people or people that you know are not, as we call, digital natives, then you need to build in the time in your agenda to support people in getting online. I sometimes do this by scheduling that tech time 15 minutes ahead of time, but I'll tell you, nobody ever comes 15 minutes early to a meeting. There's a few people out there, but very few. Normally you need to think of this as really like if your meeting's starting at 9, the first 15 minutes are going to be supporting people getting onto the platform and doing tech support. It's frustrating, but it's just part of what we do. The next time it'll be less. I've even done tech support for up to 45 minutes in some northern remote communities because it was their first time getting on Zoom. So there's this big pink one here, knowledge of the platform being used. I can't stress this enough. You obviously don't want to go into doing a virtual meeting having never used Zoom or any of the tools you're using. You can get to know them by doing just tech tests. You don't have to be afraid of them. You can tell people very openly it's your first time using it or whatever, but you need to at least be somewhat familiar with the tools. Otherwise, you'll be caught in a tight place. So teams and roles, I think more so than in in-person meetings, it really helps to have at least 2 people supporting an online meeting. So you need a strong facilitator, obviously. I would say, again, even more so online than in person. And then you need a team, and we're going to review some of the different roles that your team members can play during a meeting. So depending on the size of the group, I've had a team of 5 people supporting meetings of 70 to 80 people. It's not too much. You can never have enough hands on deck for virtual meetings. So the other category here is the participatory and diverse formats. So this, I think, is where people get a little bit worried about virtual meetings, but I'm here to tell you that it is very possible to host participatory online meetings. And again, Jamboard, for example, is one example of how you can make your workshop participatory or meeting. There's ways that I'll get into that allow everyone to speak and share what they're thinking. This person says a good combination of smaller group work and large group work. Absolutely, very important part, especially if you're having a 3-hour meeting. Variety of engagement types, so you want a mix of presentations, breakout rooms, and discussions. The one thing here that I've put in orange, which I think is important to highlight, is that virtual platforms, one of the places they cannot mimic an in-person meeting is this one-on-one discussion. I've heard of people setting up breakout rooms to allow that one-on-one. I personally haven't done it, so it's possible. But it's not like going to the coffee station and, seeing, oh yeah, I've been meaning to chat with that person, and walking up to them and having a conversation. There's no way to replace that online, unfortunately, at this point. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the breakout room section of the workshop. I've also added that it's important to provide a chance for feedback or evaluation. If somebody's had a frustrating meeting, it's really important to give them an outlet to tell you about what you might do differently next time. It's also important for people to go, wow, that Zoom meeting, I thought it was going to be awful, but it was actually great. I've had that reaction quite frequently, actually. People are quite surprised that the meeting can go so well in these virtual spaces. So, there's a bunch of ways you can get that feedback, either by using the chat. You can set up a Google survey with a couple questions. Again, you can share the link in the chat box. I'll walk through some of these options later on, but asking for feedback is important. The final item that happens after a meeting is follow-up, right? So this is often what gets forgotten, but I would say is so important, especially if you're working with a team in an ongoing way. You want to do some follow-up by providing notes or minutes and sharing any resources or anything that came up during the meeting. So it just sort of keeps the conversation going. So there you go. Welcome to Jamboard. And again, the name of the game here is that what makes a good meeting in person, which you are all very familiar with, generally also makes for a good meeting online. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Take what you know from your lived experience and think creatively about how to apply that online. So as you can probably already tell, I am a fan of Zoom, and this entire workshop is built around the Zoom platform. So I just wanted to provide you with a bit of an orientation to Zoom, in particular, the back end of Zoom. Why do I like Zoom? This Zoom I've used many different meeting platforms over the course of my career, and Zoom is by far the most user-friendly and simple to use. The other thing that I really like about it, particularly for those of you who work in remote or rural communities, is that it bridges the phone and internet capacity. So if you have one participant who is very comfortable on computers and has an internet connection at home, and you have, an elder who is never going to get on a computer but knows how to use the phone very well, then those two can have a conversation, and you can still use these online platforms despite the fact that you have an elder or, somebody who doesn't have internet connection. So that's a really, really useful feature of Zoom. I've already mentioned them, but breakout rooms are possible, and once you figure out how to do them, they're really very easy. So this breakout rooms are essential, as far as I'm concerned, to making online virtual meetings participatory, engaging, interesting, and fun. So breakout rooms in Zoom. Another thing I like about Zoom is that they have this built-in translation function. It's not perfect, but it is very well done, and again, very simple to set up once you know how to do it. The only caveat to that system is that unfortunately it's only available at this time to online users. So if you're on the phone, you can't access the translation function. There's an option to use Zoom on a server. So in other words, you can join a Zoom meeting without downloading the application online. I know this is a concern for some participants, so that will appease those participants who are not comfortable with downloading an app from the internet. However, they will have limited functionality. They will not be able to do everything that all the other participants can do who are using the Zoom app, but just so you know, it's there. And I know there's been a lot of concerns about privacy on Zoom in the very early days of the pandemic. We all heard about these Zoom bombs and so on happening. But Zoom has responded quite well to this and has put in all kinds of new privacy measures. So I would just say, though, as you're playing with those functions, just remember that the more privacy functions you put in place, the harder it will be, generally speaking, for your participants to join. So they're set up to be barriers, right? And they do create barriers. So again, if you have a group of people who are not tech savvy, just be careful about the privacy settings you choose to use. And just, here's some basic information about the cost. I think, again, for the, they do provide these call-in numbers, but there's, I think, only 5 or 6 numbers for all of Canada. So myself, somebody who hosts a lot of these meetings, I've now moved towards I've integrated a toll-free call-in line, which is not cheap. The basic package is $100 a month. But there you go. That's what it costs. So other options for those of you who can't use Zoom for whatever reason, obviously there's Google Meet, Teams, WebEx, Adobe, Skype, GoToMeetings, and I'm sure there's many more that I haven't named here. Okay, so let's continue on to the back end of Zoom. This is one of the most important parts, I would say, of getting acquainted with Zoom. The first thing you need to do is, if you don't have a Zoom account, go to www.zoom.us and create an account for yourself. If you already have one, please go and log in, and this will all be much easier and more straightforward if you can see exactly what to do while you're doing it. So I'm going to walk you through just some basics of setting up a meeting, as well as some of the back-end functions. So I keep going back and forth about whether to do the back end first or the front end, but I think we're just going to start with the back end here. So this is what the Zoom website looks like. You'll see here in the upper right hand corner, I think it will, if you don't have an account, it'll say join or something like that in the upper right hand corner. So I'm going to just assume that you have already created yourself an account. If you haven't already, you can just pause the video and do that. I'm just going to take you straight into my account. So as you can see, this is my account, Amanda Sheedy. I'm based here in Montreal. And you want to just look down the left-hand side here. You'll see I'm on my profile page right now. This page here shows upcoming meetings that I have scheduled, not through here, but through my app, webinars, personal audio conferencing, recordings, which I occasionally use, and then settings, which is really, settings is what I'm going to dive into. But you want to get familiar with this back end and all of those things. If you're just using, I never use this admin, simply because I have a very simple Zoom account, and I'm the only person who uses it. There are a lot of functions in Zoom that you will not require if you're just using it for simple meetings. So don't get caught up in all the details. Just settings and your profile are probably what you'll need at the beginning. I also would like to point out that Zoom has some incredible support. So you can either attend live trainings, there's tons of video tutorials, and just play around in here. If you have a question, look, there may be an answer. You also always have this little function in the bottom right where you can text or chat with someone to find what you're looking for. So as you can see here, I'm in the settings function at the back end on the website. You can see up at the top, I'm at zoom.us, right? So this is not in the Zoom app. This is online. This is where you do all of your playing around with different settings. The Zoom app itself is just for hosting and attending meetings, okay? So as you can see here, you have some sub issues here. I'm in the meeting section here where you have some options for security, how meetings get scheduled, in meeting basics, in meeting advanced. Those are the two that I tend to use the most. So let's just go through here a little bit. So as I said, there are some things that have been improved on Zoom around security. So now you either have to have a waiting room on, which means that as everybody comes in, they automatically go into a waiting room, and then you have to allow them in with just a simple click of a button. So I tend to use that, especially for bigger meetings now. You're also welcome to turn on a meeting passcode. As you can see, I have this function turned off because this creates an additional barrier to people who are on the phone in particular. So they need to enter 2 long numbers if this function is turned on in order to get into the meeting. And it just creates confusion, trust me. So I tend to use the meeting waiting room option instead of the password. I'm going to skip, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I encourage you to keep going, embedding the passcode in the invite for a one-click join. This is very important, right? So then the person, if they're joining online or through their cell phone, all they need to do is click on that link, right? They don't have to enter a password manually in order to get into or a room number, anything like that. I do not use this authenticated users. Again, if you're very concerned, if you're having like a meeting with elected officials, for example, you may want to use this. But in general, I do not. I keep it as open and easy as possible because I know things change often. So play around with these. So in the scheduled meetings, so when I schedule a meeting, I want everyone's videos to be on as soon as they come in. So that's why I have these 2 things on. I like to always give everyone the option to either use the telephone or the computer audio, right? So this again creates that bridging capacity that I talked to you about before, where you can either join the meeting through your computer or through your telephone. So that's why I select that top option there. I don't allow people to join the meeting before me. It's just a personal preference. I'm going to keep moving down here. Some people like to have people muted when they come in. I prefer to not have people muted when they come in. Again, personal preference. So now I'm down into in-meeting basics here, okay? So under that, we have things like, in allowing people to chat. I think that's a very important part of having a participatory meeting, so I have that on. I allow people to have private chats as well, and then I like to save the chats. Some meetings, there's so much great stuff shared. I just like to know that I don't have to download it. It's just going to save automatically at the end of the meeting, and then I can go back and find those tidbits. Here's another important one. If you're hosting your meeting with somebody else, it's important to have this on so that you can give them some of the administrative powers during the meeting. We'll get into that maybe a little bit later. I like to use polls, so I have the poll function turned on here. I like to always see the control bar toolbar, especially for participants who aren't familiar. It's important to have those buttons available all the time. Sharing screens. So this is, sets up who can share screens. Again, as you can see, I like to have the screen share available to all participants. So that means anybody who might be presenting or decide they have something they want to share with us from their computer. There's no barriers. It's already on, and they can just share. But this is an important backup too, is that who can start sharing when someone else is sharing. So let's say one of your participants accidentally shares their screen. You want to be able to quickly go, whoops, yeah, I'm going to share my screen, and sort of bump them off, right? So that's kind of the backup plan I have in case, frankly, it's never happened to me. This is a new one that I've just started to play with around annotation. There's a whiteboard function which right in Zoom that I don't actually use because I prefer Jamboard. But as you can see, it's there in case we want to use it. I have meeting reactions turned on so that people can, clap or share their reaction. And then there's a bunch of other details here. Okay, so we're jumping into in-meeting advanced now. Okay, so here are some other functions that you might want to turn on. So the breakout rooms, I've mentioned those a few times. This is where you turn it on. Okay, so any of these things, you have to turn them on before your meeting starts. Otherwise, they won't be functioning. So in other words, if you get into your meeting and whoops, you realize you don't have the little breakout room button, you can't actually come onto the website, change it, and then go back to your meeting and have it work. It won't work. So you really need to plan ahead of time and make sure you have all of these things set up before your meeting. As you can see, there's a lot of options here to work through. I'm just highlighting the ones that I use. Virtual backgrounds, some people like to hide their messy house behind them. As you can see, I don't care, but I allow others to do that. What's another important one down here? I think that about covers it. Those are the things that I wanted to share with you today. Maybe just another thing to mention, if you decide to record a meeting for whatever reason, first of all, know that I've discovered a few glitches in the recording functions, but you can record to the cloud. In other words, Zoom will allow you to record meetings and store it on their website for a couple months. This is a great option if you don't have a note taker or you're worried about missing some details. You can choose to record just audio or video as well. Obviously, this takes up a lot of space. I'll let you fiddle around with it, but just know that, this is over on the left here, this is where you access your recordings, and the other places where you can play with the settings to set up your recordings. You can also just save onto your hard drive if you're worried about security or anything like that. The last thing I just wanted to show you is up here at the top here. I just went to prices and plans. So, again, Zoom, like all platforms, has many, 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 many options available to you. I don't know anybody who has more than this basic pro plan, which is I think about $20 a month or $200 for the year. as you can see here. The free version is a great place to start, but you'll be bumped off your meetings after 40 minutes. So in my world, 40 minutes is not enough time for any meeting. There's a few that you can do in 40 minutes, but generally you want more than that. So you will probably want to get this pro plan. As I mentioned before, that does not include 1-800 numbers. That's an additional package. So I think that's all I wanted to show you on the Zoom website. Okay, so while you're on the website, you probably saw that you were given an option to download the Zoom software. So you will want to choose the software that's right for your computer, whether you're on a Mac or a PC or different operating systems. One small tip about Zoom is that they are constantly upgrading. So if you ever find that some of the functionality isn't working anymore, you may just want to upgrade your Zoom program. So as you can see here, I've now clicked on the little Zoom icon, Zoom.us it's called, and the program is now open. This is what the first page looks like. So I have 4 options here. I personally don't use any of these functions. As you can see, my contacts are empty. So I'm on the home button right now. So a very simple way to set up a meeting with your personal ID, which you will have set up in the back end, is to just start a new meeting. So I use this for most of my simple meetings. I don't use them for big meetings. I'll explain why in a second. But So you've gone to the effort of setting everything you need up in the back end. We just had a look at that on Zoom.us. So now I've actually opened a Zoom meeting through the app, which is what you're seeing on your screen now. So we're going to just review some of the functions in here so that you know where they all are and how to use them once you're actually in the meeting. So as you can see, I've asked my family members, my 2 kiddos and my partner to join on their own apparatus, just to give you a sense of what it actually looks like in a real meeting setting. So mute button, stopping your video, which I'm not going to do, but these are 2 important buttons to know about. One of the things that, so this here, let's have a look at the participant box over here. So this is where you get the list of participants. Let's say that Eric was making noise because he wasn't muted. I could go in here and just mute his line. Let's say that Hannah is going to help me hosting the meeting today, so she needs some functionality. I'm going to make her the co-host. Okay, so that means that she can now play with some of the functions that normal participants can't. So she'll have different buttons pop up and so on her screen. You can also rename people yourself. I tend to ask people to do this themselves by hovering over their, you can't see it on mine because I'm the host, but most of the participants will see a little box in the upper right-hand corner of their image. And when they hover over it, we'll have an option to rename themselves. For participants, and I don't have this here, but if somebody shows up on the telephone, you're going to see a telephone icon here. If you have someone who is calling in addition to being online, so this is again the hybrid version of both being online for visuals, being able to see each other, being able to watch the presentations, as well as calling in to make sure you get good quality sound. You will need to merge their line. There's a way to ask people to do that themselves by going in here and changing their audio settings. It's also extremely easy for us to do this. So let's say there was a phone right here underneath Liam and Liam had called in on that phone. I would just click and drag the phone right on top of Liam. It's as simple as that. It's really very straightforward. And that way you know that if you do breakout rooms, Liam's voice and his video will go into the same room. So it's important to do that if you're doing breakout rooms and you have people using that hybrid model. The other thing I wanted to show you in here was the different views. So I've pinned my video right now, but I think I mentioned to you my preferred view for these kinds of meetings is in gallery view. Okay, this is just a way to see everybody at once, make you feel like you're, oh, there's the 3 little dots. It's appeared now. So in my 3 little dots, I'm the host, so I have a few extra options, but there's the renaming option, and my favorite, hide self view. So I'm just going to take that off, and now you can't see me. If I want to bring that back, so during meetings I like to do that because I'm recording, I'm going to show my self view again. The function you will use probably most frequently is sharing your screen. So this is if you're sharing the presentation. Let's just go back to this virtual meeting. So the screen share gives you an option. As you can see, I have a number of things open on my computer. So I'm going to say, oh yeah, I just want to share that Google Chrome version of what makes a good meeting. And that's all I want to share. So then all you need to do is click on Stop Share when you're done with that. So once you click on Chat, you'll see this little box pop up and a couple quick options in there. It'll automatically be addressed to everybody. So hello, and it posts up to everyone. If I just wanted to send a private message to someone, I click on the everyone, and maybe I want to send Hannah as my co-host a direct message, you see, and nobody else will see it except her, although it will show up in the downloaded version. The other thing I wanted to show you in here was the polling. So once you've set up a poll, this will appear. If you have not turned on your polling function, if you have not turned on your breakout functions, if you have not turned on your screen sharing, all of these things, if you are missing buttons that you think should be there, you need to go back to zoom.us on the web version of the application. That's where you change all those things. So I've turned all of those on, so they're here. So let's launch the poll. Just to point out to the need for a lot of background work and preparation before you actually get here. So I'm going to launch this poll. Let's see if you can still see it. Yeah, so there you go. This is what I believe participants see minus the timer. So if everyone was responding to this, you would see in real time the numbers going up. Once everyone had responded, I could see that 3 out of 3 had answered, or maybe you get up to only 2 out of 3 because someone went to the bathroom. I would then end the poll, and it would show in very concise visual way how many people answered which question how. Okay. As you can see, this is not being shared with participants, but I could turn around and share it with participants so that they could all see the results of the poll that they just contributed to. So it's a really fun function to play with, as I said, especially for larger groups. Let's explore the breakout rooms, one of my favorite functions on Zoom. So you click on this little button at the bottom here that says breakout rooms, and this little window pops up. So it's very straightforward. So you can create up to 50 breakout rooms in Zoom. In this particular case, obviously I can't go much higher than, well, it's letting me go much higher, but we have 3 participants. So we'll make 3 breakout rooms. You have the option of assigning automatically, so it'll just be a random assignment to groups, or you can assign it manually. So let's just do that so I can show you how it works. Oh, I've never seen that. Let participants choose a room. That is a new Zoom option. See, they are constantly changing. So that's something I'm going to explore because that makes breakout rooms even more fun. Once you click on the breakout rooms button, you will see the number of rooms that you've chosen to make. You can still add a room or even delete a room. So don't ever feel like you can't go back. Then what you need to do is assign people to the breakout rooms. You can rename the breakout rooms if that makes it easier for you. For now, we're just going to keep them the same. And then you go and assign the participants. So you can see I have the list of all of the participants here. Let's just see what happens if I put all 3 of them in here, right? So I have 3 participants in this room. But then I decide, whoops, no, I want to put Hannah into room 2. And I'd like to move Liam to room 3. So you can play with this. Once you can also play with the settings here in the little button at the bottom, which is not popping up, but you have a little settings there, and you can automatically close the breakout rooms after a certain number of minutes. So I'm going to put 5 minutes just so you can see there. You can also set a countdown after closing the breakout rooms for a countdown. So there's a lot of options in there that I'm not going to fiddle with too much today, but you're welcome to do so. So this is what your tech person is doing while you're facilitating or there's a presentation going on. So they're getting all the breakout rooms ready for you. Once it's time, so that can just sit there. Now that it's done, you just leave it on the side. You can even close the little window if you want to and just open it again when you're ready to go. Then when you're ready to go, you click Open All Rooms. And as you can see, everyone is popped automatically into the room because that's the option that I chose in the settings. While I'm here now, so you can see I set a 5-minute timer, so everyone who's in their breakout room can see exactly how much time they have. This is the one thing about breakout rooms, they can be a bit jarring when people come back together, so it's good for people to know how much time they have left. I tend to like to broadcast a message, as you can see in this little box, so especially when there's 1 minute left or when there's 5 minutes left, or let's just say there's 3 minutes left, and then I click broadcast, and then every participant will see a little message pop up on their screen. Once the timer is up, I'm obviously not going to wait the 5 minutes now. It's time to go. We're going to say close all rooms. And as you can see, I've set it so that there's a 60-second countdown. So everybody has now got this little 60-second timer on their screen, which they can either move to the side and continue on, or they can click on the button and come back into the large group together. So that's how breakout rooms work.